at around 17:13 hours, the police found Mr. D.H. in the vicinity of his house. He was arrested and brought to Long Mountain Police Station, where he was informed that he would be charged for the offense of rogue and vagabond. Whilst at the police station, Mr. D.H. was requested to submit to a breath test, which he refused. He also refused to provide samples of blood and urine. Consequently, he was booked for the following offenses after having been informed about them. 1. Failing to provide specimen for breath test. 2. Failing to provide a sample of blood or 2 samples of urine. 3. Driving motor vehicle with alcohol concentration above prescribed limit. As he was drunk, he was detained in police cell at Piton Police Station pending sobriety. On Sunday, 28th of May, 2023, he was interviewed for his defense statement, but he refused and stated that he would give his statement in presence of his counsel. Thereafter, he was released and was requested to call at Long Mountain Police Station for inquiry on Monday, 29th of May 2023, in company of his counsel. On Monday, 29th of May 2023, at 9 o'clock in the morning, Mr. D.H. called at Long Mountain Police Station and informed the police that his counsel was not available and he would give his statement on Friday, 2nd of June 2023. However, on Tuesday, 30th of May 2023, he called at Long Mountain Police Station in the company of his counsel, and his defense statement was recorded. On the same day, he appeared before the Pamplemousses District Court on a provisional charge of rogue and vagabond. He was thereafter bailed out upon furnishing a surety of 2,000 rupees and a recognizance of 10,000 rupees. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am further informed by the Commissioner of Police that the inquiry is proceeding.
Mr. Speaker, can I know from the Honourable Prime Minister, he said that he refused for a breath test. He was caught in his car or at his place?
Sorry, he was caught. I didn't hear the question. He was?
Repeat your question.
The police caught him in his car or at his place 3 hours later?
No, he was arrested, according to information that I have, at his place. I just mentioned that. Let me check. As he was drunk, later at around, he just drove away in his car, in a car. I don't know whether it was his car. But at around 17:13 hours, the police found Mr. D.H. in the vicinity of his house. And there he was arrested and brought to Long Mountain Police Station.
Mr. Speaker, Honourable Prime Minister, you must be aware que le gouvernement est si impopulaire que même le DPM... Let me finish. Let me finish.
Let me finish first. You can't ask the Speaker to let you finish. I am on my feet. And there is only one orator, Honourable Juman, not you. You don't have the floor. Put your question. This is a supplementary question. Put your question directly to the main question.
Parce qu'il y a un ministre qui a été insulté dans sa circonscription. La question est à ça. Puisque le gouvernement est si impopulaire que même le DPM, l'honorable Denou, le député Denou, le DPM au Bigadou, ne semble n'avoir pas échappé aux insultes dans les circonscriptions.
No. I stop you. If you don't have questions, Honourable Two, put your question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Would the Honourable Prime Minister have information whether when the home solar project started and the source of funding thereof?
Well, let me see whether I have this information. Yeah. So that was conceptualized and developed following measures initiated in the budget speeches 2016, 2017, and 2017, 2018. In fact, measure 185 of the budget speech 2017-18 stated that, and I quote, some 700 million rupees will be invested in the solar home project comprising the installation of 10,000 rooftop solar panels over the next 5 years for low-income households in the social tariff category. End of quote. The deployment of the 10,000 solar photovoltaic kits under the HSP was planned for implementation in 5 phases, including a pilot phase. Initially, solar PV kits of 1 kilowatt would have been installed on the rooftop of houses of eligible and qualified socially vulnerable households. This was done on a pilot basis. However, considering the falling prices of the photovoltaic and also the benefits to be derived by the eligible households while reaching the target of the project more effectively, it was decided then to upgrade the size of the PV kits to 1.5 kilowatt. Mr. Speaker, sir, in fact, a feasibility assessment for the HSP was prepared by the CB and submitted to the International Renewable Energy Agency for funding through the Ministry of Energy and Public Utilities under the title Deployment of 10,000 Solar Photovoltaic PV Kits of 1 kilowatt each to households in the social tariff category. And while the funding proposal was under consideration by IRENA, in the meantime, the CB kick-started the implementation of the first phase of the project, which aimed at deploying 1,000 solar PV kits of 1 kilowatt. This exercise was fully funded by the CB to the tune of 62,510,833 rupees for capital investment. The phase 1 of the project was successfully completed in November 2021. A total of 996 solar PV kits were installed in Mauritius and Rodrigues. And now we have the phase 2, where we have sought the funding from the Abu Dhabi Fund for Development. On 12th of January 2019, a loan agreement was signed between the ADFD and CB for an amount of 36.73 million Emirates dirhams, that is equivalent to about 10 million US dollars. Well, there is a request for first, well, I don't need to go into all that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Can the Honourable Prime Minister confirm to the House whether the council defending that person is actually an active member of PTA party? Thank you.
Well, I believe so.
Order, order, both sides of the House, order.
I am informed that this council is Mr. Andy, who is actually a member of the Labour Party.
Order. 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 Let's finish on that count.
Le Premier ministre vient de faire mention... Oui, bien sûr. Oui. Le Premier ministre vient de faire mention de l'arrestation d'un habitant de la localité de la circonscription numéro 4 suite à l'incident impliquant votre ministre de l'Énergie. Est-ce que le Premier ministre peut confirmer à la Chambre que la personne se sentant offensée, donc votre ministre de l'Énergie, a fait une déposition à la police contre cette personne arrêtée?
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, let me enlighten this honourable member on legal matters. Maybe he's not, I can understand he's not versed. Let me allumer son ampoule, qui peut-être s'est brûlé. I mentioned Honourable Asia Vaden. I mentioned the charge is for rogue and vagabond. So whatever evidence has to be gathered by the police, I believe some of them, they have already, taken statements and so on. Of course, I am not here to reveal from whom statements have been taken, because this is an inquiry which is ongoing. I'm sure you will appreciate that when an inquiry is ongoing, there are certain things that I can disclose publicly, but there are other things that will not be appropriate for me to disclose. Well, why you interrupt? Let me finish. When you asked the question, did I interrupt you? So, soyez poli, Monsieur Asia Vaden. Donc, Mr. Speaker, sir, as I say, the inquiry is ongoing, and ultimately, when the case will be completed, well, it will follow its course, and ultimately, well, if anyone has to answer for a charge, he will have to answer.
Next question.
B673.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I am informed by the Commissioner of Police that following an intelligence report from the Financial Intelligence Unit received in March 2023, the Police Headquarters Special Striking Team and the Major Crime Investigation Team initiated an inquiry into a suspected case of money laundering and other likely criminal offences. In the course of investigation, credible and reliable information was obtained that the case was linked to the theft of copper to the prejudice of Mauritius Telecom. In that respect, on Monday, 10th of April 2023, at 14:45 hours, following intensive intelligence gathering and after continuous surveillance operations, the Police Headquarters Special Striking Team searched the premises of Tradeway International Limited, a scrap metal yard situated at Industrial Park, Latu-Kenik, by virtue of a search warrant issued by the District Magistrate of Black River Court. During the search, 1,062 ingots of copper, each weighing around 22 kilos, 242 emptied PVC plastic cover insula, from which copper wires have been removed, 24 mold and 62 raffia bags containing rolls of copper wires were found and secured by the police as exhibits. An inquiry has been initiated into the case with respect to money laundering. I am further informed by the Commissioner of Police that 21 persons have been interviewed, out of whom 6 persons have been arrested and released on bail, namely Mr. D.P., Director, Tradeway International Limited, Mrs. R.B., Company Manager, Tradeway International Limited, Mr. V.B., Shipping Manager, Tradeway International Limited, Mr. F.S., Manager, Procurement, Mauritius Telecom Limited, Mr. M.S., Director, GWS Technologies Limited, and Mrs. V.S., Director, Richmond Capital Limited. They have all been provisionally charged for the offence of conspiracy to money laundering. Mr. Speaker, sir, as regards Part B of the question, the emptied PVC plastic cover insulers were identified as being the property of Mauritius Telecom. An in-depth inquiry has been instituted in this case.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Taking into consideration that there is an ongoing inquiry, can the Honourable Prime Minister provide information with regard to the shareholders and the directors of Tradeway Limited situated at Latokeni? Thank you.
Shareholders, let me check. Mr. Speaker, sir, yes, I'm informed that Tradeway International Limited has 3 directors, namely Mr. C.M., Mr. S.M., Mr. D.P., and Mr. C.M. is the only shareholder of the company.
Thank you, Honourable Prime Minister. Can the Honourable Prime Minister provide information whether statements have been recorded from the directors mentioned and the shareholders he mentioned of Tradeway International Limited?
Well, I'm informed that statements have been recorded only from Mr. D.P., the director of Tradeway International Limited. He was then arrested and charged for conspiracy of money laundering. He was released on bail on 24th of May 2023 after furnishing a surety of 100,000 rupees. As regards Mr. C.M. and Mr. S.M., no statement has been recorded as they are abroad.
Thank you, Honourable Prime Minister. Much has been said about this case in different quarters of the media as well. Can the Honourable Prime Minister inform the House, he mentioned that there are few directors or shareholders who are not in Mauritius. Has there been any action initiated on behalf of the government or on behalf of the police for the recording of their statements?
Well, according to records, Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. SM is the brother of Mr. CM and is also the director of Tradeway International Limited since 21st of July 2020. He was born in India. He is the holder of a valid occupational permit as professional. He left Mauritius for France on 22nd of February 2023 and he is still abroad. Mr. CM, who is also director of Tradeway International Limited, since 20th of November 2012. He was born in India and also a citizen of Mauritius by registration since 4th of August 2021. He left Mauritius for Dubai on 8th of April 2023, and therefore he could not be interrogated in connection with the case. But nevertheless, depending on the progress of the inquiry, the possibility of seeking assistance for the repatriation of Mr. CM may be explored for the recording of statements as he is a Mauritian by registration.
Honourable Two.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is the Honourable Prime Minister aware if Mr. MS has any foreign bank accounts?
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, if I just want to remind the House, I myself has, speaking at some public meetings, political public meetings, I have put a few questions at that time. And I recall that on one occasion when Mr. MS was on radio, he was pressed with questions with regard to whether he held any foreign bank accounts. And after quite some time, he finally answered to say to say that he has neither he nor his wife has any bank account abroad. But I will leave it for the inquiry to reveal whether he is telling the truth or whether he is lying. We'll see.
Honorable Ahmad.
Speaker, can we know whether the Honorable Prime Minister is aware of the imposition of any objection to departure for Mr. MS and Mrs. VS?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I am informed that prohibition orders have been issued by the magistrate of Port Louis South prohibiting Mr. MS and Mrs. VS from leaving the country until the determination of their case by virtue of Section 14 of the Bail Amendment Act 2002. The passports have been secured by the police. Only Mrs. VS has entered a case contesting the prohibition order, and the case is coming for arguments on 7th of June 2023.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, may I ask the Honourable Prime Minister whether he is aware that despite seizure of those copper ingots, the scrapyard at La Tour-Koenig is still operating? No seizure has been made and the license has not yet been suspended. Is he aware of that?
I'm not aware about the, as suggested by, as being said by the Honourable Member, of the continued operation of that company. What I have answered is whatever has been seized as exhibit for the purposes of the inquiry in this case. I will find out from the police and from other authorities also whether any other action is being contemplated in line with what the Honourable Member has stated.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. May I know from the Honourable Prime Minister the company profile and business activities of Tradeway International Limited and whether FIU also is doing an inquiry on them?
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, I am informed that the FIU started investigating into the alleged case of money laundering to the prejudice of Mauritius Telecom as far back as 2021. 4 ex parte applications were made by the FIU before the judge in chambers on 28th March 2023 with a view to obtain a restriction order in respect of a number of persons. These ex parte applications were granted on 29th of March 2023 by the judge in chambers after she considered affidavit evidence before her, and such orders are not granted on the mere asking of the FIU. The judge in chambers must be satisfied that the FIU has valid grounds for moving for a restriction order before she can grant the restraining order. Restriction orders granted by the judge in chambers are valid for a period of 12 months and can be renewed. The test which the FIU must satisfy before successfully obtaining a restriction order is set out in Section 27(1)(a) of the Asset Recovery Act, which reads as follows, and I quote, "Where property is reasonably believed by the enforcement authority to be recoverable under subpart B of this part and to be proceeds, a benefit, or an instrumentality or terrorist property, it may apply to a judge for a restriction order in respect of that property." End of quote. While a restriction order is in force, authorities such as the FIU, MRA, and police must use these 12 months diligently to further inquire into the cases. A restriction order prevents a person from disposing of his property while the restriction order is in force. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is highlighted that proceedings before the judge in chambers are privileged and that only the parties to the case have access to the rulings and orders of the judge in chambers. And pursuant to Section 31 of the Asset Recovery Act, a party who is under a restriction order may apply to the judge in chambers for a variation or a rescission of the restriction order. Currently, I am told that some parties who have been the subject matter of restriction orders have applied for variation of the orders. Well, it will be for the court then to decide whether to grant a variation or not.
The Honourable Prime Minister mentioned that at the basis of this case, there is a theft to the prejudice of Mauritius Telecoms. So may I know from the Honourable Prime Minister whether at the time the theft was committed to the prejudice of Mauritius Telecom, Mr. MS was his advisor and was not questioned nor harassed as long as he remained his advisor.
The honourable member didn't listen properly and carefully. I have never mentioned a case of theft. I have never mentioned. You must pay attention to my answer, not to anybody else speaking in this house. So what I said, maybe I repeat for his benefit, and I hope he listens carefully. I said that the police headquarters special tracking team and the major crime investigation team initiated an inquiry into a suspected case of money laundering and other likely criminal offences. So it will be for the inquiry to reveal, ultimately, if ever, I said if ever, I don't prejudge the issue, if ever any offence has been committed.
Mayor?
I have listened carefully and properly, Mr. Speaker, sir, and my question has already been canvassed. Thank you.
Next question.
Mr. Speaker, sir, as the House is aware, policies, procedures, and rates of per diem payable to officials, including ministers and members of the Parliament, proceeding on official missions overseas, are clearly spelled out in circulars issued by the Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning and Development. Funding for overseas missions is provided under the centrally managed expenses of government, vote of the Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning and Development. For the last 5 financial years, funding for the overseas missions has been provided as follows. 1. 160 million rupees for the financial year 2018-2019, 122 million rupees for the financial year 2019-2020, 48 million rupees for the financial year 2020-2021, 70.1 million rupees for the financial year 2021-2022, and 174 million rupees for the financial year 2022-2023. Mr. Speaker, sir, the main policy guidelines for mission overseas, as per the circular letter number 10 of 2017, issued by the Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning and Development, are as follows. 1. Missions have to be prioritized on the basis of their importance. 2. Arrangements need to be made with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade for missions abroad not warranting the formal presence of a minister or official for our embassies' missions to be represented on same. 3. For any mission, the number of delegates should be kept to the minimum except for missions where specific technical expertise may be required. 4. The route chosen should be the most economical and direct one. 5. The most appropriate officials should be designated for any mission taking into account the expected objectives and outcome of the mission and the level of representation required as well as the technical skills demanded. And 6, maximum use should be made of teleconferencing and other modern telecommunication facilities. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is apposite to note that funds earmarked for overseas missions are used to pay only for the following: 1, international travel such as airfare and train ticket; 2, per diem to meet costs of accommodation, meals, internal transportations, and all other related expenses; 3, entertainment allowance for mission abroad only, where applicable; 4, hiring of cars for mission abroad only, where applicable; and 5, registration and training fees. Mr. Speaker, sir, the information requested by the honourable member is being compiled and will be placed in the library.
Time over. Honourable, time over. Will be placed in the library. The table has been advised that the following PQs have been withdrawn: B678, B680, B686, B689, B690, B679. Also, PQ B692, 696, 723, 725, 726, and 739 have been withdrawn. I now call on MP Ganga Prasad to proceed.
B691.
Mr. Speaker, watch and security services are provided in primary and secondary schools as per 2 contracts, namely one for night watch and security services and the other for daytime watch and security services. The procurement exercises are carried out by my ministry through competitive bidding exercise based on approved specifications. Mr. Speaker, sir, in respect of watch and security services, I'm tabling the list of contractors as well as the terms and conditions of the contract.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, sir, given that millions of public funds are spent in the watch and security services, will the Honourable Minister inform the House if cases of theft were reported in primary and secondary schools, and to indicate the items stolen and the value of sale?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I am aware that there has been a number of cases where tablets had been stolen from schools, and I'm also told that they are normally replaced by the service provider, those responsible for night services or daytime security services. I don't have the exact value right now, but I'll be pleased to inform the Honourable Member once I get the values.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, sir, will the Honourable Minister inform the House the number of contracts, if any, which have been terminated as a result of their failure to respect the terms and conditions, and what steps have been taken to ensure that the watch and security services provided to primary and secondary schools are satisfactory for the welfare of students, staff, and other stakeholders?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm informed that there is a monitoring system at the level of the ministry. I will, if I find it, I'll table it for the information of the Honourable Member.
Next question.
Yes, B693.
Mr. Speaker, sir, with your permission, I shall reply to the question. With regards to party of the question, I am informed that the estimated cost for the new warehouse is around 1 billion rupees. A more realistic figure will be available once it will be worked out by a consultant. With regard to part B of the question, given the strategic importance of the project, I am informed that the STC intends to approach financing institutions to raise the required funds to construct the warehouse. There is currently no provision in the price structure of MOGAS and gas oil to collect funds for the construction of the warehouse by the STC.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, before I start with my supplementary, did the minister say 1 million rupees?
Around 1 billion. Yeah.
1 billion?
Billion?
Billion. Milliard, okay. No, it's what I wanted to clarify. Mr. Speaker, this is what we call après la mort, la tisane. It is only, can I ask the Honourable Minister, why is it that it is only after the discovery of rice, which was found to be unfit for human consumption, that it's only then that the STC has taken the decision to build a new storage facility?
No, this is not so, Mr. Speaker, sir, because the project was announced in the budget speech 2019-2020. But after the budget was voted, the honourable member will appreciate that we've had the outbreak of the pandemic COVID-19, and STC has put this project on hold.
Mr. Speaker, we all know what happened, that rice was contaminated and has to be thrown away. I don't know exactly how much the country has lost in terms of monetary terms for this rice. But can I ask the Honourable Minister, in the meantime, can he assure the House, the country, the nation, that measures are taken so that such thing does not occur again until this new storage facility is being finalized?
Of course, the STC has taken all steps in order to avoid recurrence of such things in the future.
Mayor.
B694.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I am informed that the total number of patients who proceeded to India for surgeries and treatment since 2019 is as follows. 335 patients in 2019, 176 patients in 2020, 173 patients in 2021, 277 patients in 222, and 191 patients in 2023, as at 31st May 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So can the Honourable Minister give us more information about the hospitals in India where cases are referred? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, sir, yes, I have a table of the different treatment. For example, for cardiac patients, they have been sent to Manipal Hospital, Bangalore, Apollo Hospital, Chennai, Apollo Hospital, Mumbai, Narayana Hospital, Bangalore, and Artemis Hospital, Delhi. As for neurosurgical treatment, they are sent to Vimhans, Indraprasth Apollo Hospital, Delhi, Apollo Hospital, Chennai, and Mumbai.
Can the Honourable Minister state how the follow-up of the patients post-operations are done in Mauritius?
Mr. Speaker, sir, before these patients are sent abroad, there is a communication line between the treating doctors in Mauritius and those where these patients would be sent. So following their surgeries, the post-operative follow-up being done in Mauritius with the collaboration between surgeons, that is the doctors in India and in Mauritius.
Next question.
B695. Mr. Speaker, sir, with your permission, I'm tabling the list of sports infrastructures that are managed and maintained by the Mauritius Sports Council, including the amount of money spent in terms of cleaning and maintenance on each site from 1st July 2022 to 31st May 2023. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, je peux demander à l'honorable ministre s'il est au courant de l'état actuel de nos infrastructures sportives, surtout les stades, les gradins et autres infrastructures, et s'il est au courant de l'état, l'abandon, et qu'est-ce qu'il compte faire pour remédier à la situation?
Monsieur le Président, la question est très vague. Est-ce que l'honorable membre fait référence à un stade ou un gymnase en particulier? Je pourrais répondre à ce moment-là.
Exemple du stade Anjali Coupen.
Oui, il a été rapporté récemment qu'au niveau du stade Anjali, il y a un souci avec les pigeons. Et là, je profite de l'occasion pour lancer un appel à la population qu'il faut arrêter de nourrir les pigeons parce que ceux-là ensuite viennent... je ne suis pas expert en pigeons. Et le Mauritius Sports Council a commencé une série de nettoyages par rapport au stade Anjali, et il me semble aussi qu'on avait le même souci au stade de Georges V, et d'après les photos qui ont été circulées, qui m'ont fait parvenir, le nettoyage a commencé et ils ont mis à propre les gradins.
Next question.
B697.
Mr. Speaker, sir, with your permission, I will provide a combined reply to PQs B697 and B729 as both relate to the National Gender Policy 2022-2030. I wish to inform the House that the National Gender Policy 2022-2030 aims at providing guidelines that underpin government's commitment to integrate gender in all planned actions and provides the basis upon which every sector is guided to develop their sectoral gender policies and implementation plan. Mr. Speaker, sir, in line with the recommended actions of the National Gender Policy, my ministry, in its capacity as National Gender Machinery and lead agency for gender mainstreaming, has strengthened the National Steering Committee on Gender Mainstreaming by reviewing its functioning and modus operandi with a view to ensuring the effective implementation of the strategies underpinned in the policy document whilst adopting a holistic approach. Mr. Speaker, sir, the National Gender Policy comprises 5 recommendations, namely the setting up of the National Steering Committee on Gender Mainstreaming, which is completed. Secondly, the setting up of interministerial technical working group, which is completed as well. Thirdly, the reinforcement of all gender cells. Fourthly, development of an action plan for the public sector. And last, setting up and launching of the Gender Technical Working Group on gender mainstreaming in private sector, academia, and civil society organizations. An initial meeting, Mr. Speaker, sir, was held under my chairpersonship with supervising officers of all ministries and departments concerned to stress on the need to align the recommendations of the National Gender Policy within their programs and activities, as well as to provide guidance on the implementation thereof. In order to implement these recommendations, a gender cell has been set up at the level of each ministry. The gender cell is chaired by the gender focal point, who should not be below the rank of a deputy permanent secretary, and is usually co-chaired by an alternate member from the technical cadre. Senior managerial officers, as well as a representative of each department or section, are the members of the gender cell. The said cell meetings are held on a regular basis in the presence of a representative of my ministry, as and when required to provide for technical assistance. Mr. Speaker, sir, it has been observed that due to a lack of understanding of gender issues, officers are very often unaware of the broad gender concepts. Thus, this impedes on the permeation of gender in all sectorial policies and programs. Therefore, in a bid to raise awareness on gender concept and gender mainstreaming amongst different cadres of the implementing ministries, a series of capacity building have been carried out to provide the officers with entry points to identify the gender gaps in their respective sectors. Mr. Speaker, sir, the following measures have also been taken at the level of my ministry. Firstly, assistance and reinforcement across ministries and departments were provided to all the respective gender cells based on the discussion and the outcomes of the National Steering Committee on Gender Mainstreaming. Secondly, 2 interministerial gender technical working committees have been held with the gender focal point of all ministries in order to guide the process of mainstreaming across these line ministries and to take cognizance of gender-responsive actions taken at the level of those ministries and departments. Thirdly, gender cells have been consolidated in all ministries with continuous support and technical assistance, be it in terms of provision of information, education, communication on gender-related issues, which are, of course, duly adapted in their particular sectors so that they're able to identify whatever gender gaps within their respective sectors and devise the best way to address them effectively. And action is also being taken, Mr. Speaker, sir, at the level of my ministry to mainstream gender across all sectors of the economy, namely the private sector, the academia, like I mentioned, the media, and the civil society organization. Each of these sectors will be assisted through a well-defined guideline for the gradual elimination of outstanding gender gaps. My ministry is currently working on redefining these guidelines, which will be launched very shortly. I am, Mr. Speaker, sir, with your permission, submitting a copy of the report, which includes the list of recommendations, and I also wish to inform the House that this document is accessible on the website of my ministry. Thank you.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président. Concernant le Comité national, peut-on savoir de la ministre qu'a fait chaque ministère concrètement sur la politique du genre?
Mr. Speaker, sir, that will be quite lengthy for me to give it as an oral reply. I will be very happy to table the reply to the House.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président. La ministre pourrait-elle nous indiquer s'il existe un term of reference sur la fréquence des réunions de chaque comité? On a compris qu'il y a 4 comités, le comité national, privé, les institutions académiques et le comité avec les médias. Sur quelle fréquence ils se rencontrent? Merci.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm actually very grateful for the member of opposition to have put this question so I can enlighten the House and the population at large. Mr. Speaker, sir, just to put everything back into perspective, the meeting in connection with the whole setting up of the Gender Technical Working Group on gender mainstreaming for the 4 sectors that I have mentioned was held on the 17th of May of 2019 at the Municipal Hall of Port Louis in presence of the international consultant, Mrs. Lichuma, who herself developed these 4 technical guidelines for the establishment of this platform. For this meeting, 7 representatives of each sector were present. In a nutshell, the following was encapsulated during the meeting. For the private sector, Business Mauritius has agreed to act as the convener. For the media and the academia, there was nobody who was agreeable to act as convener, and for civil society organization, the MACOS agreed to act as convener. In general, though divergent views were there related to the guideline which you're mentioning, especially as regards to the conveners, finally it was agreed that these guidelines will be prepared in line with a binary definition. Unfortunately, thereafter, following the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, it was viewed with a lot of concern that the gender cells at the level of public sector were almost inactive. And therefore, the ministry deemed it more appropriate to re-engineer and redynamize the institutionalization of the gender cells in the public sector first. Prior to going to the other 4 sectors, the ministry started this in July of last year, after the restriction of the pandemic was removed or reduced, to ensure that all the gender cells are activated and fully institutionalized in the public sector. Thus, given that the gender unit, which is also the machinery, as I said earlier on, initiated the following actions, like I said earlier on, with the launching of the policy, the National Steering Committee was held. It doesn't mean that although we have encountered delays, which I've explained why, The work has been ongoing, Mr. Speaker, sir. Around 2,979 targeted audiences have already been sensitized in an ad hoc manner at grassroots level. Assistance as resource person are also being provided to the Mauritius Civil Service College in delivering set courses on the gender mainstreaming and gender concept. In parallel, Mr. Speaker, sir, my ministry ensure actions toward reactivating, like I said, and refreshing the commitments of these technical working groups for all 4 sectors. And to that effect, the ministry is pursuing all its effort in redesigning and developing a new version of the guidelines for the 4 sectors. The guidelines set specific principles and rules within each of these technical working groups that they should follow, and which will help pave their way towards and take onus in mainstreaming gender in their sector. And in that vein, my ministry is proceeding with the printing of the guidelines, which will be launched in due course in the presence of those 4 respective sectors. Thank you.
Next question.
B698.
Monsieur le Président, suite à l'impact de la pandémie de Covid-19 sur notre économie, le Wage Assistance Scheme a été mis en place en 2020 par ce gouvernement afin d'apporter un soutien financier aux employés du secteur privé qui seraient sinon retrouvés au chômage technique. Le gouvernement a également mis en place le Self-Employed Assistance Scheme et a accordé une subvention unique pour les travailleurs indépendants afin de préserver les moyens de subsistance de ces derniers. Monsieur le Président, en ce qui concerne la partie A de la question, les sources de financement pour payer l'allocation dans le cadre du Wage Assistance Scheme sont le Consolidated Fund et le National Resilience Fund. Dans le cadre de ce régime, avant janvier 2021, un travailleur percevant jusqu'à 50 000 roupies par mois recevait une allocation équivalente à son salaire de base, plafonné à 25 000 roupies. Ces montants ont été augmentés de 375 roupies à partir de janvier 2021 pour tenir compte de la compensation salariale. Pendant les 2 périodes de confinement national, l'allocation au titre du Wage Assistance Scheme a été versée à tous les travailleurs éligibles. Après la levée partielle du confinement, nos frontières sont restées fermées aux touristes et les arrivées de touristes sont restées faibles par la suite. Par conséquent, le Wage Assistance Scheme a été maintenu pour les travailleurs du secteur du tourisme pendant cette période. En outre, afin d'empêcher la résurgence et la propagation de la Covid-19, un certain nombre de locaux ont dû rester fermés au public, tandis que d'autres entreprises ont été autorisées à ouvrir sous réserve de restrictions sanitaires strictes. Certaines régions ont également été déclarées zones rouges et certaines activités d'attroupement ont été interdites. Ces entreprises ont continué à bénéficier du Wage Assistance Scheme. Monsieur le Président, en ce qui concerne la partie B de la question, j'ai été informé par la MRA qu'un montant total de 20,750 millions de roupies a été déboursé dans le cadre du Wage Assistance Scheme. Monsieur le Président, en ce qui concerne la partie C de la question, la MRA m'a informé que certaines entreprises ont retiré leur demande et ont volontairement remboursé en totalité ou en partie le montant précédemment perçu dans le cadre du programme. Le deuxième mode de remboursement a été l'introduction d'un Covid-19 levy pour récupérer une partie du montant de l'aide financière versée dans le cadre du Wage Assistance Scheme aux entreprises qui ont réalisé des bénéfices. Le prélèvement était payable sur une période de 2 ans et ne dépassait pas 15% du revenu imposable de l'entreprise pour chacune des 2 années. Le premier paiement de la taxe a été effectué dans la déclaration d'impôt sur le revenu soumis en 2020-2021. Afin d'alléger le fardeau des difficultés financières de certaines entreprises et aussi prenant en considération la compensation salariale en 2023, le gouvernement a décidé d'annuler toutes les dettes impayées, y compris les pénalités et les intérêts du Covid-19 levy au 20 janvier 2023. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
table has been advised that B705, B706, B732, B730 have been withdrawn. Honourable members, I'll suspend the sitting for 1.5 hours.